Hi, everyone. I don't think we need to announce who is here, but we have Eric Trump sitting next to us. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. We've been looking. We've all been looking forward to this conversation about your new book, your thinking on debanking, your perspective on how crypto sort of fits into the next chapter of American finance. And this has all generated a ton of interest, I think, from everyone in this room.
Yeah, I think for today's conversation, we want to explore three big themes. One being the U.S. financial system and the concept of debanking, the rise of digital asset markets and crypto adoption, and the companies you're building and how you see the space evolving. So let's jump in.
Yeah, I think first we'll talk about sort of debanking the U.S. financial. Go ahead, actually.
Well, guys, thank you very much. It's awesome to be here. Hometown, so this is a nice conference. Normally you're schlepping somewhere across the world, and so for everybody that's not from Palm Beach, Florida, welcome, and to all of our friends. I feel like I know half the people in this room, so love many of the people in here.
Awesome. We really appreciate you being here. I think we wanted to chat about your book to start, and your book dives into the idea of individuals and businesses are increasingly being debanked. For people who haven't read the book yet, what is the core argument you're making, and why are you doing it now?
Well, honestly, guys, it's not an argument. I mean, I was probably the most debanked person in history for never doing a damn thing wrong, right? I mean, one day I wake up and I get a letter from Capital One, 300 bank accounts are gone. The next day it's JP Morgan Chase. The next day it's Bank of America, and I could go down the list. First Republic, for doing nothing. The only thing that we did was my father was wearing a red hat that said "Make America Great" on it. And they wanted us out of the system, and they wanted to debank us, and they would do it for any reason whatsoever. And these were condominium buildings, these were restaurants, these were hotels, these were commercial buildings. These are buildings that had lockbox accounts with various lenders. You lose your bank account, you're put into default on a building instantaneously for doing nothing wrong. You had great cash flow, you were doing everything right, and they would strip those accounts from you in the middle of the night. And the very same people that they were debanking us for the political reasons. They were debanking people in crypto because I think they saw crypto as a massive threat to so many of the big financial institutions out there. It's kind of ironic you look at it now when everybody's embracing crypto, but this was in a period where they were trying to kind of keep it from gaining ground. And I made a lot of great friends during that period of time. As awful of a period of time, and as many kind of years of my life as I probably lost as I had to fight through that. I mean, again, it wasn't solvency of an asset. It was that you just didn't have rails to run those assets on because, again, they just, they didn't want you. And, I guarantee you there's people in this room that have been debanked. It's a real thing. And again, they were going after the crypto people, and I started meeting other people that were in the same situation, and I realized that there is very few things that can't be done better, cheaper, faster, and more transparently using blockchain technology. And so I'm a hard asset guy. We own more of these things than anybody, right? I mean, it's what I do. I've been in construction my entire life. We're in the golf space. We're in the hotel space. We own a lot of commercial buildings, a lot of residential buildings, a lot of clubs, including Mar-a-Lago, which is a couple miles away from here, which I'm sure most of you have been through at some point. I never really thought I'd be the guy out here and all around the world espousing digital assets. And what I've come to realize is I really think digital assets are the greatest hedge against hard real estate. If you look at a building like this, and this building's changed hands a couple times. I knew it under the former ownership, and I know the guys that own this place now. They probably spent a year actually doing the transaction. You had every broker in there. You had every title company in there. I'm probably insulting somebody in this room by going through this list, but you had every banker. You had every single person that wanted to take kind of a piece of what this transaction was. The transaction probably took a year to actually consummate. It was complicated, and there's very few people in the world that probably could have taken down an asset that's as valuable as this, or as valuable as a Mar-a-Lago, or as valuable as a Trump Tower, and that can be great. Those can be structural advantages in certain situations. They can also be huge detriments in other situations, right? I mean, having liquidity, having instant liquidity, having global liquidity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is a massively powerful tool. Having an asset class which, can't be destroyed by a flood or a fire, or can't be destroyed based on, corrupt governments that we do have around the world, or a broken financial system, or, kind of weaponization, one of those things that I face kind of firsthand. There are real structural advantages to that, right? An asset that you can literally move anywhere at any time, liquidate anywhere at any time. If you look at Bitcoin and kind of, a big passion of mine, and this is also an asset that's gone up, roughly on average about 70% year over year for the last decade. And so, there's very few assets on planet Earth that even remotely competes. And so, I never thought that kind of, a political journey. I was on the political journey in that it kind of as a spokesperson for my father. I wasn't on the political journey in that I hate most politicians and kind of stay, away from Washington, D.C. But I never thought that kind of this political journey would have this law of unintended consequences that otherwise brought us into this kind of digital asset realm. But I believe in it with every ounce of my heart and soul, and these guys obviously clearly do, because I think you're one of the great leaders in the space on the banking side.
Appreciate that. Just to double click on the political before we jump into some of the tech elements, how do you think we got to a point where people feel that the banking system isn't working for them, and how do we get to this political or ideological point in your life and other people's lives where the banking system wasn't working for them?
I would say 90% of my friends are in the financial industry, and many of them being banks. It's honestly, it's not even like a criticism of the banks in certain ways. Every single one of them have told me, and I know the heads of every major bank. I'm having lunch with one in an hour. The regulators would come in under past administrations and say, oh, interesting, I see this company on your books. Look at this. They'd flip right to page 17 or whatever the hell page it was, and oh, that's interesting. We're going to have to look a little bit more closely at you, right? And so if anybody doesn't think the system was weaponized, it was. And it was weaponized against a lot of people, and it was probably weaponized against people in this room. I can guarantee you it was weaponized against people in this room and many people that you otherwise knew. And so I think we got to that point by having, a system that wanted to corrupt every institution for their own kind of political benefits. And that's a hugely, hugely dangerous thing. The financial market should not be, they should not have, various regulators knocking down their door, pointing at various accounts and saying, hey, I would rather see this one gone from your books. And that's what was happening. I mean, you saw Letitia James do that to us in New York. I mean, and thank God we beat her in New York. But I mean, she literally ran on a platform of taking down our family. She ran on a platform of getting the Trump name off of every building in New York City, and the sad thing to me about this is, we're not a political organization. We have as many Democrats, check into our hotels as we do conservatives. We have just many people on one side, working the organization as the other. But, the thousands of lives, that are part of these ecosystems, that are part of a commercial building, that's part of a big hotel. I mean, Trump Doral in Miami, 100 miles from here, we have almost 1,000 employees that work at that place, and you had people who wanted to destroy their livelihoods, their way of getting paid, the way of paying real estate taxes, to pay your ability to pay utilities and other things, and so we can never let it to happen again, guys. We can never allow this system to happen again, and it's one of the reasons I've kind of lashed out at some of the big banks the way I have, the ones that really came after us. I wanted to make it a point, and I wanted, frankly, in certain ways, to almost embarrass them. They should be for what they did to a lot of people, and also, I think it's one of the things that's kind of spurred on crypto, right? Again, why does J.P. Morgan need a 70-story building? Why, right? I mean, what are they doing in that building that, again, can't be done on blockchain faster, cheaper, more transparently? How many people do they have working in these buildings that really don't need to be there? And we all know the cost to run these assets. And guess who that's being passed on to? It's being passed on to the consumer. Who has no kind of ability to negotiate pricing, who has no efficiencies, who has no synergies, and I don't think that's a very kind of democratic process, to say the least. I think you could get better terms faster, cheaper, again more transparently using blockchain technology, and I think that's coming. And again, the banks did everything they could for a long time to kind of hold off the tide. And now all of a sudden you see Jamie Dimon out there every single day saying, yes, we're embracing Bitcoin, we're embracing cryptocurrency. I mean, I think they realized that they either embraced it or they were going to get run over. And now you see Charles Schwab, they're doing it. You see Fidelity. I'm not sure if you've been watching what Fidelity's doing with the digital asset wallets. Pretty incredible. Everybody that has a Fidelity 401k effectively is getting pop-ups every time they go to log in to see what their 401k is. Would you like to create a Fidelity digital asset wallet? You click yes, you have a wallet right under your 401k, and you can trade. You can trade all cryptocurrencies. You see how successful the spot ETFs have been. You see how it's going into 401ks, into IRAs. You see what I'm doing at American Bitcoin. So, equity markets, you can get exposure. So crypto is no longer something that you had to do on ledgers, which are convoluted and a pain in the butt. No one really likes the experience that you get right now by going through DeFi. That experience will get better. They'll bring more hospitality into it. It'll get cleaner and more efficient. But now all of a sudden you can get crypto experience through conventional equity markets, and it's one of the reasons that it's exploded the way it has.
It seems like all this debanking and these issues were really a catalyst to innovation in the market. Is that what you've seen?
Well, certainly for me it was, right? I mean, I didn't have a choice. I was just on CNBC, and they go, well, don't you think, why did you get into cryptocurrency? And I said, guys, I didn't have a damn choice. Like, I didn't have another team, and so I kind of went with the choice I had, and it happened to be a good one, right? It's in life, I really believe in the law of unintended consequences, and this was like the greatest unintended consequence that I could have never possibly imagined, right? It's one action that just changes, and I can guarantee you that if you went back, Capital One would not have debanked us now, given the noise that we've made and given how much we've pushed for kind of a new modernized finance. But I really do believe that this will be the future. And, forget about Bitcoin, right? I mean, for a second, that's digital gold, and we can talk about kind of what I'm doing in that space. But look at tokenization. So we just announced, I'm tokenizing 2 projects right now. One, the Maldives, Trump International Hotel in Maldives, and one in Dubai, Trump International Hotel and Tower. Right in the center of Dubai. It's going to be one of the most beautiful buildings anywhere in the world. And you're seeing this whole tokenization concept, right? And they're all starting to roll together. You've got stable coins. You've got, kind of tokenization of assets. I really do believe that if we fast forward, a decade, 5 years, you're going to see Taylor Swift go out. And, why wouldn't she tokenize one of her albums? Why is she going out to Paramount Records? Why are there 40 middlemen they're not the ones who are talented singers. They're not the ones that could draw millions of people over the world. They're not the one that's flying over and doing a concert every single night in a different city. They're doing nothing, and they're taking, the vast majority of the profits. Why can't a Taylor Swift, using a very silly example, say, you know what, I'm coming out with a new album, and to my incredible fan base, I'm going to tokenize this. Buy one token of Taylor Swift for $100 or $500 or $1,000 or whatever the hell it is, and I'll cut you in on 70% of the profits of that album, and that's how we're going to finance that. Or, you want to buy the next, great Picasso painting. You can't afford it. The paintings could go for $50 million, but you want to own, 1/100th of that Picasso because you love art and you want to be staked to something that you really love. You're going to see tokenized art. You're going to see tokenized commodities. You're certainly going to see in oil and gas where, right now, based on how long it takes to move money, these companies are losing billions of dollars a year in just interest associated with their daily trade. So you're going to see tokenized commodities. You're going to see tokenized art. You're going to see tokenized real estate. You're going to see tokenized movie ventures in Hollywood. I really think it's going to actually change the way we finance projects. You're certainly going to see tokenized real estate. If I want to do that Trump Tower Dubai, why can't I go out to the people who love our family, love our company, believe in what we do, believe in who we are, believe in the way we execute our business plan? Why can't they go out and buy a token of Trump Tower Dubai for $1,000 and otherwise be my financing? Why do I have to go to Deutsche Bank? Why do I have to go to one of 5 other people who in the world who could probably afford to actually provide financing for that building? Why can't I do it? And why can't you tokenize end loans for consumers who want to come in? And the answer is you can, and the technology exists. And I think the world of hard assets and the world of kind of cryptocurrencies and the world of stable coins are going to start really coming together in ways that, as much as I see it on the horizon, that even we can't fully embrace right now.
I think maybe we jump to sort of your companies and your investments in the industry. You've built and invested several crypto-related companies. Sort of what is the unifying theme behind those investments, and how do you see that as fitting into the overarching ecosystem?
Well, I think the overarching theme, is from a philosophical standpoint, it's actually America. So I really am on 2 sides of this. American Bitcoin, we just went public about 2 months and 20-something days ago. Just had our first earnings call. It was unbelievable. We ran 56% gross margins, doubled our revenue, in a very short period of time, and we're just climbing the stack. I think we're going to be one of the great, Bitcoin companies anywhere in the world. We're doing great things, but we're mining all our Bitcoin, West Texas, using some of the cheapest energy in the world. Our sister company is Hut 8, who many of the people in here know. I know all your analysts, cover it very well, and they're amazing people. I've gotten to know them very well, and they're covering obviously American Bitcoin. But right now, we're mining Bitcoin for roughly 50 cents on the dollar. So as we're sitting here right now, we've got the most, efficient, effective data centers in the world. Our largest ones in Vega in Texas, but all water-cooled machines, and we're mining Bitcoin at some of the lowest costs. So we're doing, again, roughly 50 cents on the dollar to the spot price of Bitcoin right now, and we're mining a lot of it every day. We can also, on the other side, run the treasury strategy, where if we see great buying opportunities, we can run the ATM. Our stock is massively up today, and so believe me, the ATM is running, and we'll kind of accrue Bitcoin on that side as well. But it's how we've kind of ascended. So we're 2 months and, again, 20-something days old. We've got 40-something hundred Bitcoin, just over 4,000 is what we just reported. We've got more than that because we're growing on a daily basis. And again, I think we're going to win the race. I think there's two races to win on the Bitcoin side. One is, who can acquire the most? And listen, Saylor, who I know spoke here and is a dear friend, he's winning that race, and he's a remarkable human being. I mean, unbelievable. He's been a good friend of mine for a very long time. And then, kind of the race, I'm really trying to win is who can do it cheapest. Who can acquire it cheapest. And I think we have a great advantage in that for every single Bitcoin we acquire on this side, we can mine Bitcoin on this side, and we can kind of dollar cost average them down. So that's American Bitcoin. We're listed on the NASDAQ, and we're incredibly proud of that. We're 7 months old and carrying up, $4+ billion valuation, almost $5 billion valuation right now. So it's just been a massive success. We have another company called World Liberty Financial, and that's really geared toward kind of the DeFi tokenization / stablecoin business. And so the reason I keep coming back to America, right, when I say the commonality is America, is I really think one of the things that saves the US dollar is stablecoins. Like it or not, and for all of us, we probably like it a lot. No one wants a stablecoin that's denominated by any other currency, other than the US dollar. They don't trust any of the Asian currencies. They certainly don't trust the euro. They certainly don't trust the pound. They want nothing to do with any of the South American currencies. Guess what everybody wants around the world? You want the US dollar. They tried to pop up a stable coin in Europe. 0.5% of Europeans were willing to buy a euro-denominated stablecoin. Guess what they all wanted? The other 99.5%. They wanted US dollar denominated. So what's going to happen is you're going to have stablecoins really take over, right? Everybody's going to trade them. And think if you live in Botswana, or you live in just take one of a lot of countries that had real inflation problems. Look at Argentina before Milei, right? They were having 80% inflation year after year. You get your paycheck, and it's instantly burnt, right? Instantly, it's just devalued. You have nothing left, and that's before you have bad banking systems. That's before you have corrupt governments and a lot of other problems. Congratulations on your cell phone. You know what you do? You take that, you convert your paycheck into U.S. dollars, into U.S. stablecoins that are one-to-one denominated, against U.S. treasuries, and you're on the American system. You're on the best currency that we have. We're going to see trillions of dollars flow into the United States economy, based on stablecoins, and I think that's a beautiful thing for our country and everything that we believe in as Americans who love kind of red, white, and blue. So I believe in Bitcoin as much as anything. I believe it's the modern kind of a digital gold for all the reasons I mentioned before. And I believe that stablecoins are going to really be kind of the oil in the system, how we transact, how money gets moved. And I think that's going to cut out a lot of middlemen, and I think that's going to hurt a lot of feelings, but I think it's actually much better for kind of the democratization of our financial system, and especially the little guy who has absolutely zero ability to influence the big banks, and largely are the ones that carry these big buildings that we see all across the globe.
Thanks for that. You talk with investors all over the country and actually the world. What are you seeing today in terms of institutional appetite for crypto as you've been on the conference circuit recently?
Yeah, kind of the cool thing about being in the hard asset space, we've got 20 plus projects all over the earth that are going up. So a bunch in the Middle East, a lot in India, Australia. We've got a lot of projects all over, and everywhere I go, guys, it's amazing. I spoke at a conference a couple months ago in Hong Kong. It was actually the Bitcoin conference there, and it was the biggest convention center you've ever seen, right in the middle of Hong Kong, and it was standing room only. We had like 30,000 people. The place looked like Madison Square Garden. And it was all people that absolutely love Bitcoin, right? And by the way, this was always a society, especially if you talk about mainland China, which was really closed off to crypto because they wanted, kind of governmental controls. And I'm telling you, that dam is cracking in a very big way. You look what South Korea is doing with Upbit and so many of these great exchanges are some of the biggest in the world. Many of these exchanges are bigger than Coinbases and stuff over here, and we're not used to hearing their names. They're just massive companies, and again, the amount of liquidity that are going into those companies is incredible. The amount of kind of juice that's going into crypto. You look at the UAE. When I've had some of the top people in these countries tell me that all of the extra energy that they're not using for HVAC and stuff in their buildings during the winter when you don't need to cool the buildings over there because it's not 130 degrees, is going to mine BTC, right? It's going into crypto ventures. And so I can tell you, so you have the biggest, private families in the world. You've got governments. You've got Fortune 500s. I mean, there's not a week that I don't open up Twitter where I don't see another, Fortune 500, enter into kind of holding some level of Bitcoin, as a balance sheet item. I mean, you see trillions of dollars that transact on a monthly basis, obviously throughout the capital markets. You see the explosive growth of the Coinbases and the Robinhoods. Then you see what all kind of the big institutions are doing, from the JP Morgan Chases, the Fidelities, Schwabs. You see what's happening in the, obviously equity markets with companies like mine, with American Bitcoin, obviously with MicroStrategy. You see what's happening on the ETF side. And this is happening all over the globe. And I could make a great case that crypto is actually even more applicable as it is to us as Americans, for just living in the convenience of modern day life. I can make even a stronger case that crypto fills the void of every single person around the world that doesn't have sophisticated markets, that doesn't have sophisticated monetary systems, that have currencies. I won't use a bad word here, but they're just not good currencies, right? And they're worth absolutely nothing. Congratulations to allow you to bring that into a store of value like Bitcoin, to allow you to bring that into a store of value like a U.S. stablecoin. And if you want to talk about Bitcoin as the store of value, I mean, this is a store of value that's 21 million coins. If gold, I mean, everybody wants to compare Bitcoin to gold, but if gold ever went to $40,000 an ounce, you know what happened? We'd all break down this ballroom. We'd go find gold in one of these columns, and we'd find traces of gold. We're going to dig deeper. We're going to explore farther, and guess what? We're going to find more. So your supply is going to increase, as your demand continues to go up and as price goes up, right? That can't happen with BTC. In fact, it actually goes almost the opposite way, in that every year a very small fraction of the tokens are lost and less come online vis-a-vis mining, based on the whole kind of halving concept. And so, I mean, around the world, I'm telling you, there is as much passion in Asia for crypto, probably more, than in the US. Same thing with the Middle East. And everybody, the leaders of these countries are all embracing it. And guys, I'm so sorry to be long-winded on this one. The reason that they're also embracing it is because America's finally embraced it. You were never going to have a Vietnam, who 6 months ago was saying we'll never get into cryptocurrency, and now they're going hog wild getting into cryptocurrency. They were never going to do that without America charting the way, and America kind of putting together the legal framework for allowing, cryptocurrencies to flourish. And now all of them are taking the very legislation that's been passed in the United States, and they're all adopting that in their own countries. And that's clearly put us as a leader. But it's we've parted the sea as a country for cryptocurrency to kind of grow around the world. And it's nice to see that America's back and leading the way, because I can tell you, 18 months ago we were not. The UAE would have been eating our lunch, as would have, China and Korea and most of Asia.
Love to see that. Love to see us as winning there. And I think, maybe in closing, you spend time in both public and private arenas. When you look at the next decade, in the crypto and digital markets, what gives you the most optimism?
Well, I think the speed of embrace. One of the key metrics was getting those big banks. And they fought it, guys. You better believe Jamie Dimon was fighting it. You better believe Bank of America was fighting it again. Why would they want stablecoin? Why would they want stablecoin to move the money of the earth when they can take small percentages of trillions of dollars that move through a monetary system every single year? And again, they can build $4.5 billion buildings on Park Avenue in New York, right? Like why would they? I'm being a little facetious, but not really. They did everything they could to kind of fight off the system, and crypto became too big that they stopped being able to fight it, and so they did an about face in about 3-day period where they went from fighting it to massively embracing it. Look at BlackRock. Look how much they've embraced crypto, and look how much money they've made on it. And so, I don't think we could ever be at a point where it turns. People love it. People believe in it. And people are invested in it. It's making up a major percentage, of kind of financial growth in our country. And so it's kind of been too big to turn around. At the same time, you have the entire world embracing it. And so I do think our best days are ahead. And I again, mark my word, if you look back in 3, 5, 10 years, and this is coming from a hard asset guy. I was a guy that grew up on construction sites, pulling conduit and doing HVAC and plumbing work. And right, like I never thought I'd be espousing this industry the way the way I am, but it's happening, and I see it in every corner of the world, and I see it with tremendous passion, tremendous enthusiasm, and I think the people who get in early, right now crypto is roughly where the internet was in terms of growth in 1999, and I think we have just miles and miles and miles to go. I think the people who embrace it early are going to do fantastically well, and I think the big financial institutions that don't are truly going to get left behind.
Well, Eric, we thank you for your time, insights, and candor. We wish we had some more time to talk to you because we could get to some other questions, but we'll save it for another day. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so
Guys,
much.
thanks for having me.